Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. And if you enjoy these weekly podcasts, firstly, if you haven't already, I encourage you to rate and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. But secondly, I invite you to check out our Inner Circle Platinum at michaelneill.org. That's my name. I should get that bit right. /Inner Circle. And you'll find there access to so much more depth and richness and scope of conversation about the inside-out understanding, about how we're made, and how understanding more about that allows us to be so much more effective and have so much more fun in the world. And the title for today's podcast came from a coaching session I actually did earlier today, and the client I was talking to used the phrase, and I just thought, oh, what a perfect phrase for how hard we try to prove how hard done by we are. How hard we work sometimes, probably not all the time, to really make sure that people know that it's not our fault, that whatever's going on, we're the victims here, we're not the perpetrators. There's I don't actually know if there's an official psychological term for this model, but I remember when I was studying psychology, there was a model, I'm going to call it the triangle of attribution. And it was essentially pointing out that in every story, there's a hero, a victim, and a villain. And that when we're telling our story, the story of our life, and what's happening to us, inevitably, we either tell it as though we're the hero or as though we're the victim. And very rarely do we tell it out loud as if we're the villain. But very often in our minds, we kind of are worried that we're the villain or people might think we're the villain. So we work our butts off to convince people that we're either the hero or more often the victim. And we just culturally are in a culture that sort of celebrates victimhood. Now, not completely, not everywhere, not in any case. And if you find your mind going nuts right now and going, I'm not a victim, I'm a victim. It's not my fault I'm a victim. Don't worry about it. I don't have to be right and you don't have to be wrong. It's just a way of thinking about it that might prove helpful. Now, for me, I always thought of that triangle when I first heard it. I don't know if you've ever heard. It's an old, I think it must be from the 19th century. But we used to do it. You'd take a piece of paper and you'd fold it, I don't know, lengthwise. You'd fold it and you'd make sort of a sort of a fan where you could pinch it in the middle and it fanned out on either side. So you could wear it almost like a barrette in your hair, or as a mustache or as a bow tie, and that would be like the victim. Polly Pureheart would always have it, the bow in her hair, and the evil dastardly Dan would have it as a mustache, and the young hero, I don't know what his name was, let's call him Ned, but the hero Ned would have a bow tie, and it sort of went, the villain would come in and would go, "You must pay the rent." "I can't pay the rent." "You must pay the rent." "But I can't pay the rent." And then Ned comes in and goes, "I'll pay the rent." And Polly Pureheart goes, "My hero." And Dastardly Dan goes, "Curses, foiled again." That's kind of what it's like in my head, at least sometimes when I'm thinking about my life. And at different times, I rotate between the roles. I rotate between the characters. But here was the thing that changed my experience forever, is one day I was winning the Victim Olympics. I don't know if I was going to get the gold medal, but I was at least in competition for a silver or bronze. I was telling a very compelling story about why my life was why I was so hard done by and why it was so unfair. And I really was, honestly, I was spectacularly making my case, mostly in my head, mostly to myself. And I started to think, oh God, I don't like this feeling. I'm working really hard to prove that there's nothing I can do. And if I'm right, if I win this argument, if I win this gold medal, in victimhood. That would be awful. And I got a little stuck because I thought, well, what do I do instead? Oh, well, I'll be the hero of my story. I'd read that was good. But the problem was I was still on the triangle. I was still experiencing a world where there were heroes and villains and victims. And while I picked a spot on the triangle that felt better, it didn't really change the game at all. And I remember thinking about, well, what if I just don't want to play the game anymore? And at first that felt kind of victim-y. Like, I just don't want to play. Why do I have to play the game? It's not fair that I should have to play the game. But what happened, as so often happens, when you can listen for even a moment beyond your habitual thinking, beyond your historical conditioned thinking, is something completely new came to mind. And what came to mind for me was, I don't have to be the hero, I don't have to be the victim, and I don't have to be the villain. I can just be me, and what is can just be what is. And I don't have to have an opinion about it. I don't have to not have an opinion about it. But what is, and what isn't, isn't. And I was genuinely surprised at how much more powerful that was as a place to come from, as a way of being in the world, than even being an empowered hero in my own story. In other words, what I saw was, I didn't need to have a life story. I could just have a life. And what I've found is, when you just let yourself have a life, when you just let yourself be alive and be yourself and show up in the world and see what happens, our experience of life gets so much richer, gets so much fuller, and the volume of aliveness that starts to come through us is kind of breathtaking. So, if you want to experiment with this idea, couple of thoughts. You probably have already had thoughts that are even more perfect for you than what I'm going to suggest. But here's a couple of thoughts. The first is, notice if there's a particular point on the triangle that's your go-to. Are you usually the hero of your story? Are you the villain of your story? Or are you the victim in your story? And if you're the victim, like, how you doing in the Olympics? You going to win this year or what? But then, whatever role is most familiar to you, just play with, maybe for an hour, maybe for a day, maybe for the rest of your life. What would it be like to live your life without a life story? To just be where you are, do what you do, have fun, and learn heaps. Have fun, learn heaps, and happy exploring. I'll talk with you soon.